Welcome to Legal Talks, Family Law 1, Talk 3. So let's start today's section with Hindu Marriage Act 1955. Then we'll discuss about valid Hindu marriage conditions. Then we'll look at essentials of Hindu marriage as per Hindu Marriage Act 1955. Then we'll move on further with Hindu marriage ceremonies. Okay, so let's first start with Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. So we have discussed earlier that Hindu Marriage Act is a codified version of Hindu law, which was codified and brought into existence on 18th May 1955. So it covers all the territories of India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So we have discussed earlier, along with Hinduism, Buddhist, Jain, and Sikh community are part of Hindu culture. Okay, so they are governed by Hindu Marriage Act. So Hindu Marriage Act of 1955 doesn't include Muslims, Christians, Parsi and Jew religions. So moving on further, let us discuss a few important terms like full blood, half blood, and uterine blood. So we'll start with full blood. According to Section 3(1)(e) of Hindu Succession Act 1956, two persons are said to be related to each other by full blood when they have descended from a common ancestor by this same wife. Will be referred as either full brother or full sister. Now, what it says is, let us try to understand it in the light of an example. Let us say Mr. X is a male who has married Miss Y. So X and Y are now wife and husband. So after the marriage, they were blessed with a male child, let us say X1, and later on they were blessed with another female child, Y1. Now, in this case, for both X1 and Y1, the parents are same, ancestors are same. X1 father is X and mother is Y. Y1 father is X and mother is Y. So two persons related to each other by blood. Now, who are related by blood? X1 and Y1. When they have descended means when they have the common ancestor. Now, who are the common ancestors here? Mother and father are the common ancestors. So, in such a case, we say X and Y are full blood brother and sister. Okay. So we'll move on further with half blood. So in case of half blood, two persons are said to be related to each other by half blood when they have descended from a common ancestor but different wives. Now what happens here is father remains the same, but children will be from different wives. So here wives change. Okay. And in such a case, the children of different wives will have half-blood relation. For example, Mr. X married Miss Y. So after the marriage of X and Y, they were blessed with a male child, P. Okay. Later on, X had to marry Z. Okay. Now, the reason for a second marriage can be maybe perhaps Y has passed away or Y has taken divorce. Okay. Now, from the second marriage, a girl child was born with T, named T. Now here, if you clearly observe the picture, so what is common? Ancestor X, okay, father is common. And what is changing? Wives are changing. Okay. In such a scenario, P and T will be related with half blood relationship. So P and T or half blood brother and sister. Okay. So we say half blood when the father is same but different wives. Let's move on with uterine blood. In case of uterine blood, two persons are said to be related to each other by uterine blood when they are descended from a common ancestor was by her different husbands. Okay. So here, wife will be the same, but husbands will be different. Same wife, different husbands. Okay. So Mr. X again married Mr. Y, and from their marriage, they were blessed with a child, male child, say S. And later on, uh, X and Y got divorced, or X passed away, and Y married Z. Y once again entered into a new marriage with Z. And from the new marriage, so they were blessed with another child, K. Now here we say S and K or uterine blood brother and sister. So here mother is same, but fathers are different. Okay. So, or other way to remember uterine blood is remember the word uterus. Children from the same uterus. Okay. Uterine blood relationship. So in this case, S and K or uterine blood brother and sister. Now, very important concept, Sapinda relationship. So, Sir means same, Pind means uh, life. Okay, so life within the same family. So there is a restriction under Hindu Marriage Act 1955, and the restriction is so a marriage cannot be performed within the family from father side 5 generations and from mother side 3 generations. Okay, so let us understand this rule with the help of an illustration. Now, let us say here there's a subject, and the subject is also counted as first generation. And when she wants to marry, she cannot marry with her, obviously, with her father, who is at second generation. And she cannot marry a great grandfather or the great grandfather or still great 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 grandfather. Now, if you see this image, this subject who is at the first level or first generation cannot marry a person, a male at second generation, cannot marry a male at third generation or fourth generation or fifth generation from her father's side. And from her mother's side, she cannot marry her great grandfather, maternal grandfather. Okay, she cannot marry her maternal grandfather. So, Sapinda relationship says you cannot enter into a marriage till 5 generations on the father side and 3 generations on the mother side. Okay, so with reference to any person extends as far as the third generation, inclusive means including the subject in the line of ascent through the mother, and fifth, inclusive in the line of ascent through the father. The line being traced upwards in each case from the person concerned, who is to be counted as the first generation. So, degrees of prohibited relationship. So, Section G of Hindu Marriage Act 1955 lays down four sections. So first, four rules that talks about degrees of prohibited relationship. So first one says, if one is a lineal ascent of the other, lineal ascent in the sense downside. Okay. Now, for example, K is the father. So being a father, he cannot marry his son's wife, or he cannot marry his father's wife, that is his mother. Okay. So if one was the lineal ascent or descent. Now this talks about both the sides. Like if K is a female, now K cannot marry uh, her father, or K cannot marry her son. Okay. Now if one was the wife of brother, so one cannot marry one brother's wife, father's or mother's brother, or grandfather's or grandmother's brother of the other. Okay, so within the closest blood relation, marriage cannot be performed. Fourth rule says, if the two are brother and sister, then also marriage cannot be performed. If they are uncle and niece, then marriage cannot be performed. Marriage cannot be performed between aunt and nephew. Marriage cannot be performed between children of brother and sister, or two brothers, or of two sisters. Okay, so these are the four rules which are referred as degrees of prohibited relationship. So whenever the relationship lies in prohibited degree, a marriage cannot be solemnized. Now let's move on with valid human marriage conditions. Conditions under ancient and modern Hindu law. So basically, when we talk about valid conditions of Hindu marriage, ancient Hindu law, it can be of two categories: mandatory conditions and recommendatory conditions. Mandatory conditions or compulsory conditions to be met. Recommendatory conditions are like, if the conditions are there, then good. In the absence of the conditions also, still the marriage can be solemnized. Valid conditions of Hindu marriage under ancient Hindu law. Now, let us look at mandatory conditions first. Identity of caste. So, if a marriage has to be solemnized, so they should be from the same caste. So, intercaste marriages were not given priority or were not considered to be good. Then, prohibition of Sagotra. Gotra is a classification of people. So people of the same class cannot marry. So they have to marry in other Gotras. Okay. Next, prohibition of relationship. Again, here we are referring back to degrees of comparison, degrees of prohibitory relationship. So that is children of same sisters, or children of two sisters cannot be married, or children of two brothers cannot be married. Essential ceremonies. So it also states that uh, essential ceremonies have to be performed in order to validate the marriage. Like Mangal Dharana is one essential ceremony. Saptapadi is another essential ceremony. So there are few essential ceremonies which have to be solemnized in order to complete the marriage. Okay. So coming back to recommendatory conditions. So here the conditions are in the light of the female girl who is going to enter into the marriage. So first condition is she should be good looking. Okay. So she should be beautiful, or she should be uh, graceful, or she should be looking good. Second, she should not be a widow. Okay, so she should not be a widow. Third, she should be healthy. So she should not be suffering from any disease or she should not be sick. Third, next, she should be younger in age than the bridegroom. Okay, the girl to be married should be younger to the boy who is to be the bridegroom. Next, the the bride should be shorter in height than the bridegroom. So the bridegroom should be taller and the bride should be shorter than the bridegroom. Okay, she should have brothers. Okay, now these are recommendatory conditions. It's not essential that all the recommendatory conditions are met, then only she will be married. So if in some cases there may not be a situation where the conditions can be fulfilled, then they'll look for mandatory conditions. If all the mandatory conditions are fulfilled, then the marriage will be solemnized under Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. Now, let us look at the modern Hindu law conditions. So, valid conditions of Hindu marriage according to modern Hindu law. So, first one is monogamy. Hindu Marriage Act of 1955 doesn't allow bigamy. It only considers or allows monogamy. Monogamy means single marriage. So, at any point of time in Hindu marriage, if a person is found to be holding two marriages at the same time, then he will be punishable under Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. Sound mind. The parties entering into the marriage should be of sound mind. Means they should be able to take decisions and adhere to the decisions that they take. Insanity prohibited. Insanity in the sense, like if one of the marriage parties, let it be the male or female, is of unsound mind, then such a marriage should not be solemnized or such a marriage should not be performed. Prohibition of relationship. So here he's talking about degrees of prohibited relationship. Like uh, a male cannot marry a sister. Okay, children of brothers cannot marry children of sisters. Okay, so children of brother and sister cannot be married because it is against the degree of uh, prohibition, prohibitory relationship. Okay, next, as we have discussed earlier, if the relationship between uh, this boy and girl or bride and bridegroom falls in Sapinda relationship, then also the marriage cannot be solemnized. So to have a fast recap, Sapinda relationship is 5 generations from father side and 3 generations from mother side. So if any way the subject is connected within this 5 generations on father side or 3 generations on mother side, then it falls under Sapinda relationship and the marriage becomes void. Okay. So generally, two important marriage customary ceremonies are to be performed. One is Kanyadanam and other one is Saptapadi. Kanyadanam refers to the act of handing over the bride to the bridegroom, okay, in the form of a ritual. And Saptapadi refers to completion of 7 steps that are taken around the fireplace, signifying the 7 stages of life. And this completes the marriage and Hindu system. The Hindu marriage ceremonies The Section 7 of Hindu Marriage Act 1955 deals with ceremonies to be performed in a Hindu marriage. So the various rituals that include or like opening rituals or pre preliminary rituals like Vagdanam. Vagdanam is an engagement of two lives to live for forever. So it's a mutual promise that the bride and the bridegroom make in a marriage. Pradhanam. Pradhanam refers to the gift. Okay, so gift, it, it is a gift for mutually each other to cherish and flourish for a lifetime. Then Panigrahanam. Panigrahanam talks about a showing or acceptance by holding hand of each other. And it is considered to be an important ritual in Hindu marriage. And next one is Silaharonam, treading of the stone. Then there are two important ceremonies. One is Vivaha Homam. Homam is like a fireplace where sacred verses are recited with the bride and bridegroom sitting near uh, the fireplace. And second one is Saptapadi. Saptapadi is of again making 7 rounds around the sacred fire to accomplish or to uh, bring the marriage to fulfillment. It is only after Saptapadi the marriage is said to be completed or the marriage is said to be accomplished. Other than this, there are subsidiary ceremonies that include Ganapati Puja, Kashi Yatra, Sankalpa, Mangala Sutra Dharana, Talambaralu, Kanakabandhanam, and Arundhati Nakshatra. And this are subsidiary ceremonies. These are other ceremonies which are generally performed in a Hindu marriage. The Hindu Marriage Act 1955 doesn't prescribe the above ceremonies as essential to bind the marriage. Now, here the important point is it is not essential, and at the same time, they are not declining it. So that means that these ceremonies are still valid and they are considered to be important. And if the family of the bride and bridegroom wants to perform them, yes, they can perform those ceremonies. Okay. So, because those ceremonies are part of ancient Hindu culture and they are still welcomed and held high in the Indian culture. If the practice of ceremonies is being followed by the bride or bridegroom, then the solemnization is recognized under Section 7 of Hindu Marriage Act 1955. Now, in some cases, there may be few traditional ceremonies that the family had been practicing for many centuries. So in that cases, even the Hindu Marriage Act validates and holds those ceremonies high under Section 7. Like, for instance, in Kerala, there is a practice of presentation of clothes to the newly married couple. So this is a new tradition. This is a new culture, but that existed in Kerala community for many decades. So even the law recognizes this. In other way is in South India, there is an ceremony of tying thali. Thali is a sacred thread. So which is also a valid custom that is widely practiced in South India. So both are like when it becomes a valid custom and practiced by many, everyone, even the law recognizes such customs or ceremonies. Now let us look at one of the cases related to ceremonies. Bahurao Shankar Lokhande versus State of Maharashtra, AIR 1965, SC 1564. Now, in this case, what happened was Bahurao Shankar Lokhande and his wife were married. After the marriage, so there were disputes between them, and the wife left home to stay with her parents. Bahurao Shankar Lokhande's repeated attempts to bring her back went in vain, and he had entered into a second marriage, or he married another lady in a temple. Knowing the second marriage, the first wife of Bahurao Shankar Lokhande lodged a police complaint on Section 17 of Hindu Marriage Act 1955, and she also raised Section 494 of IPC in the police complaint that she had registered. Later on, Bahurao Shankar Lokhande was convicted on bigamy grounds. Now, bigamy here comes in. Why? Because he has not divorced his first wife. When his first wife was alive, without giving a divorce, he has entered into a second marriage, which is seen as a crime under the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. Now, the accused challenged the prosecution in the court that the marriage was void as there was no proof of marriage performance under Section 7 of Hindu Marriage Act. But the Honorable Supreme Court squashed the conviction for the offense of bigamy. So here the Supreme Court has made it very clear and denied and did not come to the rescue of Bahurao Shankar Lokhande because he had committed a mistake or he deserves a punishment of not following monogamy and practicing bigamy. Okay, so let's move on with another important case of Devineni H and VRML Chidambaram Chittiar, AIR 1954, MAD 657. Now here, both the wife and husband were members of an Anti-Prohit Association of Tamil Nadu, and their marriage were formed with no customs were followed, or as a part of their marriage, they did not follow any custom. The only thing that they did in their marriage was exchange of garlands before elders, friends, and invitees. So there were no ceremonies, there were no customs. After the marriage, after a few days or after a few years, there was a dispute. A dispute arose between wife and husband. Then wife filed a case against husband. The husband contended that no marriage ceremonies were performed and marriage was void under Section 7 of Hindu Marriage Act 1955. So giving the verdict, the Madras High Court held that there was no proof of performance of any essential marriage ceremonies, and mere exchange of garlands will not turn a marriage to be valid. So here what can be understood is it is essential to solemnize marriage ceremonies. Okay, so this brings us to the end of today's lesson. So see you in the next lesson.